Hello and welcome to the BucketLister Podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the BucketLister Podcast. Today I am chatting with my fellow director of the Bucket List Company, Sian. Hello, Sian.
Hello, Keith. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Well, finally, after I think this is like episode 41 or 42, we've let you to come onto the podcast. So
I know, I feel so honoured that I'm finally being allowed into the tribe. It's a true honour that I'm finally being allowed on the podcast, which I know is your baby, Keith. So I understand.
It's not just my baby. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking to lots of different people about lovely adventures. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, because obviously I set up the Bucket List Company. You came in a couple of years later. We already knew each other beforehand, but you had kind of found this love of traveling and you were into group travel. You had been going on group travel. You've been on a couple of our bucket list trips as well before you came involved. And kind of that's what I want to talk about today really is, you didn't do the whole gap year thing. You went and got a career, you set a business up, your life changed, and then you kind of found traveling. So I think that's kind of where we should start really. So how did you find group travel?
Yeah, okay, sure. We'll get straight in then. So like you say, I was never fortunate enough to do the gap year thing at 18, which so many of my friends did. They went off and did the campfires in Thailand and the trip to Australia, which funny enough always makes me think of the In-Betweeners movie. Yeah. They all did that. And I kind of looked at it and thought it's something I'd quite like to do, but I was never really committed to it. I remember looking at it and I don't know, that I just wasn't that in that frame of mind at that stage of my life. I wanted to, build a career. Actually, I just wanted to earn some cash. And I'd moved in with my then boyfriend, quite young. It just wasn't on my agenda. And so whilst all my friends were off doing that, I ended up having my first baby when I was 21. And then by 25, had another one, got married. And by 30, I'd had 3 kids, had, built a home. I'd built my business during that time as well in a completely separate sector. And travel was kind of as far from my agenda as anything. It was very busy with the business, with 3 kids, running a house. And the holidays that we did go on were very kind of typical holiday, traditional family holidays, 2 weeks in Spain, a week in Greece, all inclusives. Maybe you go out on a boat trip once a week. There was nothing more to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. So many people find a lot of joy in that, and I'm certainly not dissing it. But
to be fair, I kind of still quite like that kind of holiday sometimes.
We had a great holiday in Portugal, our family and your family. We had a great time, and there is absolutely a place for that. But I just remember thinking, there is a big wide world out there. And at some point, I know I want to explore it. I didn't know when at that point, and didn't know, when or how actually I was going to be able to do it. So in my early 30s, I got divorced, and all of a sudden I had this time in my diary, which had never been there before, which was time when my girls would spend with their dad. They would go for kind of the school holidays, a few weeks in the school holidays or a half term. And my business was at the point where it no longer really needed me there to function. I had a fabulous team who could pick up the pieces. So all of a sudden I had these 2 weeks periods of time where actually I could maybe go and see the world. And I remember I phoned up a travel agency and said, I've got these dates. I'm child free and I want to go on an adventure. And they sort of said, well, where? And I was like, anywhere, anywhere you can fit me in. And they suggested a group travel holiday which friends of mine have sort of said, you should try it, go on one of those group adventures. And I think I had the wrong impression of what it was going to be like. I didn't really think it was going to be as amazing as it was. So anyway, I signed up and I paid my money there and then. I thought, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And a couple of weeks later, I found myself on a plane to Indonesia, flying to Jakarta, which as a first solo trip is a bit of a culture shock to step out into Jakarta. And yeah, that was 2 weeks. We travelled from Jakarta through Java and West Java down to Ubud, and spent a few days in Bali. It kind of tied in everything, a bit of adventure, bit of, out in the jungle. We did some city stuff. We saw temples. We were at the beach. We jumped off of boats into canyons. And it was just a real great first experience of group travel. And from that moment, I was hooked. I think I came back and booked another one almost straight away. At that point, I hadn't heard of the Bucket List Company, Keith. So
no, that's a lie.
That is a lie, actually. No,
we were friends then.
I just at that. Okay, so I'm going to reframe that then. At that point, the Bucket List Company were doing more trekking holidays, and I still didn't think I had that in me at that point. So I chose to go with another group provider who we're going to leave nameless. And I think from there I went to China. I did the Great Wall of China. I experienced all the Beijing, Xi'an, Yangshuo, went through Hong Kong. I went to India. I went to Japan. I actually went to Gozo for a week, which we do with scuba diving. Some of Europe. I have travelled to North and South America, Costa Rica being a favourite, Colombia over Christmas. I've been everywhere, and I absolutely love the dynamic of group travel. I love that kind of anticipation before you get there. Who's going to be on the trip? Like, is it going to be? Am I going to get on with them? And of course, you get on with them. You meet people of in exactly the same mindset as you, people with the same outlook on life, the same zest for life, and just it's always great. The people I've met have been kind of formative in it. The rest of my travels, I would say. They taught me about places I never even thought of traveling to. So that's how I got started. Like you say, we did know each other before I'd started my travels, and I think we probably started speaking a little bit more once I was traveling. And
I always remember you telling me that you had booked onto a group adventure travel trip, and I think I was probably more shocked than anybody else, to be fair, having knowing you before that. I mean, I think the word solo traveler and group travel, they kind of almost say two things, but I always think you are a solo traveler going on a group adventure. That's how I would describe it. I don't think solo traveler, I would call someone that went traveling on their own an independent traveler. They're going by themselves. And for me, at the Bucket List Company, we have 75% of our customers will book their first trip with us as a solo traveler, i.e. not knowing anybody else on that adventure. And I think for a lot of people, especially, for women, that is a big step to go and take, I think, personally.
It is. It's scary. And I always say when people phone up in the office and they talk to us and they say, I'm booking on my own, is that all right? And I say, yeah, like exactly that fact. 75% of our customers are traveling solo. And you're right. It's not to confuse solo with alone. There is nothing lonely about our trips. The beauty of our trips is that 3/4 of the group will be on their own. So they'll be in exactly the same position as you. They might be a little bit nervous as well at the start. Are people going to like me? Is there going to be anybody my age? What if everyone's fitter than me? That used to be my concern as well, going on treks and things like that. Will everybody be running up the mountain and I'll be struggling for my life climbing up, But everyone has the same fears and anxieties about a trip. the beauty of kind of my own experience, I think, Keith, is that we bring that to the Bucket List Company and say, right, what was I anxious of? Let's put things into place so that our travellers don't feel like that. Things like, that anxiety of beforehand, who am I meeting? Who's going to be on the trip? Well, we set up a WhatsApp group at the Bucket List Company, don't we? So people know who is going to be on their trip and can have a little bit of conversation beforehand, can even say things like, I'm going to be at Heathrow Airport wearing a red top. Can anyone see me? Oh, yeah, it's me. And all of a sudden,
flower in my pocket.
Yeah, exactly that. And, we build those relationships beforehand. You're right. So 75% book solo. We also group people, like room shares with people of a similar age and same gender. So people aren't sort of with somebody that they might not necessarily form a friendship with outside of the group. The beauty being on our trips, we have friendships between 18-year-olds and 70-year-olds. Everyone's the same outlook on life, and our trips really show that you can have that cross-section of friendships. I don't think age is a barrier, is it? I think if you look at a lot of our trips, you will have people of all different ages. And I think that makes the trip more interesting because people have more life experience than other people. People have more things to bring to the conversation. Like we've had we've had an 18-year-old on a trip, and we've had a 75-year-old on the same trip, and everyone's got on really, really well. Age is just a number. It makes no difference in travel. You're so right. So going back to that very first trip to Indonesia that I was on, there was a couple on that who'd booked on as a couple, an older couple. I'm sure if she's listening, she won't mind me saying, Liz and Brian. They were from New Zealand, and they were just the loveliest couple. They were probably in their 60s, late 60s when they booked that trip. And I just got on with them like a house on fire, even though there were people on the trip who were my age, who I got on with similarly as well. I just loved sitting and chatting to Brian and listening to Liz and all of her stories about her kids and her life. She's a nurse. And I just, it didn't matter that there was 25 years between us. It just didn't. We were on this trip together and we were experiencing something together at the same point in our lives. Similarly, when I was in China, I was traveling with a lady, Cynthia, and her husband. And again, we're still in touch. She was from Australia, and she was similarly quite a lot older than the rest of the group. But it wasn't even recognised that she was older. It just wasn't. We had 20-year-olds on that trip, and we had Cynthia and her husband. And one of the most beautiful memories of any trip I have, Keith, and I've told you this story many times, is when I was travelling back from Thailand, the trip I had in Thailand. I came back through Singapore and had a few days in Singapore, or went off to Singapore, I should say. And I did that completely independently. So I was on my own in Singapore. I just needed a few days on my own. And I travelled out into the city one day. And as I was queuing up to go on the Singapore Flyer, which is their equivalent of the London Eye, there was a lady in the queue, and she said, "Oh, excuse me, dear, I'm on my own. I just can't quite read this ticket." Now, she was a considerably older lady. She ended up telling me she was in her late 80s, travelling on her own. And she was telling me, as I was reading her ticket and helping her onto the Singapore flight, that she'd lost her husband the previous year. And this was going to be kind of a real bucket list experience for them to go to Singapore together. She told me they travelled all over the world together, but that Singapore held a special place in their heart for one reason or another. And they were going to come back, and she'd done it on her own. And me and this lady, I never found out her name. I don't recall. We actually spent the rest of that morning together. We went on the Singapore Flyer together. We then got on the bus and we travelled across town and we had lunch together. And she ended up telling me about her life. And it was just one of those moments where, age really, it wasn't about her age. It was just about two people experiencing something. We were both on our own at that point, and we just had the most lovely time together. I've never heard from her since. I've never spoken to her again. But as I left lunch, she handed me a package. And as I'd gone to the toilet after getting off of the Singapore Flyer, I'd left her. She'd bought the photo of us, and we'd kind of done the kind of pose in front of the camera. She bought it, and I've kept that. And I just look back and I think, when you're on your travels, just talk to people. It doesn't matter who it is. Talk, ask questions, be intrigued, be excited by people, and listen. And you never know who you're going to meet or come across or form a relationship with, however old or young they might be. Everyone's got a story, haven't they?
Yeah, I think that's the lovely thing I find about group travel is people think that when you're on a group travel trip, you never get any, some people feel you never get any time on your own. Like it's full on. But group travel trips aren't like that. If you're one of those people that, don't want to go out with the group in the evening, you can quite happily, go out to a restaurant on your own, have an early night. You're not forced into anything that, obviously if you're going on an Everest base camp trek, you kind of got to get up every morning and go trekking. But if you're on, a slightly different trek where there's an excursion where you're like, I don't really feel that I don't feel like that. I want to stay at the hotel and chill out. You kind of can do that. There is no, and I think on a group travel trip, just you're never on your own if you don't want to be. If you want to be, that's fine. But actually, if you want to go out and speak to people, and I love trekking with people because, I quite often will put myself at the back. And, the conversation, you just spend all day talking to people and you learn so much about people's lives and what they've done. And you probably know more about them than their friends do at home because they don't actually spend that much time being able to have those conversations.
We don't often have good quality conversations in life, really, if you think about it. Like, we're always being distracted by one form of technology, or our phone's going off, or our watches are pinging, or, somebody wants something of us. So the art of good quality conversation is sort of lost. Whereas when you are on these trips, you really are deep diving into people's lives. You find out so much about people when they're traveling, when things go wrong, when people are tired, when trekking in particular, when you're tired, when you're pushing that final bit, and the conversation is really the only thing you've got keeping you going. Thinking back to Everest Base Camp, the conversations we had at the back of the pack there, we were having the time of our lives. We were singing, we were dancing, we took it easy. It was so much fun. And like I said, in general life, we don't have those conversations anymore. So you're right. The people you meet on trips, and the sort of the quality of conversation you have is deep. People can really be themselves on the trip as well. They've not got the stress of kind of work or family or anything like that. So they don't need to have that kind of usual facade up. It really is, you are laid bare on trips, and that's what I love about it, the kind of the gritty realness of traveling.
So when you started doing your group travel, mm-hmm. and you went with various different companies you've been with, like I've been with different companies on trips as well, like there are others out there that are equally as good as we are, but I think where we are different with the Bucket List company is the fact that we do include that UK leader. And, that was until you had come on the Everest Base Camp trek, that was the first time you would experience going with a company that was a fully guided trip in terms of that. What do you think the benefits or the negatives are of having a UK leader from your perspective in terms of as a traveller rather than being part of the Bucket List company?
Okay, so there's probably pros and cons, like you said, to each. It will definitely come down to the individual traveller. I think, thinking back to the very first time I travelled to Southeast Asia on this Indonesia trip, I was terrified. I was sat on the plane and, my shoulders were shaking where I was trying not to cry because I was, first time really doing something like this. I had to get myself not just to Jakarta airport, but I had to then find the hotel. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like, I don't know, the things like the exchange rate, when you see in the little taxi, the numbers and they're like in the hundreds of thousands, you're like, I don't know, what is 700,000? I just don't know what it is. So I was terrified and I was scared I was going to be ripped off. I was worried because back home, I had mum saying, oh, is it safe? Is it safe for a woman to be traveling on her own? And if I'm honest, I didn't know. I didn't know whether it was or not. So to have somebody like we do at the Bucket List company meet me at the airport, give me my tickets, check me on the flight, say, go and have something to eat, have a wander around duty free, we'll see you at the gate, get me on the plane, get me into Jakarta airport and then to the hotel would have been it just would have eased that anxiety. Because for the first day of my trip, looking back in hindsight now, I was anxious. I was nervous. I did it and I got there and, it was fine. But then even like when we got to Jakarta, I remember looking out the hotel window going, oh my God, I've got to cross that road to get to the little shop to get water. And I was terrified, thinking about the first night when I was in Beijing, I had to go out and get food. The second night when we had the guide with us, I met the in-country guide there. We found the most amazing little backstreet restaurant. I would never have gone down because I thought I would have been like raped and murdered, if I'm completely honest, if I'd gone down this alley. So, there definitely are huge pros to having a UK leader. When things go wrong, they are worth their weight in gold. For example, when I did Everest Base Camp with the Bucket List company as a passenger, so I wasn't actually part of the company at that point, my bag went missing and ended up in Bombay or somewhere. So, at that point, all I did, Keith, was say to you, my bag's not come off, and you dealt with everything. So, that's what we would do now behind the scenes. We'd make all that right for the customer. And at the time, it was just such a relief not to have to do that myself, because if I was a completely independent traveller, I wouldn't have known where to go, what the sign said. I wouldn't know how to speak to somebody, all of those things. Even getting to Kathmandu airport and having to do the visas without a guide there is quite a challenge. And our customers often come back and say how useful it was to have someone there. I guess the pros of just having in-country guides, there are many as well. So, for instance, when I went to
just to be clear there, like we get this quite a lot, don't we? Why do you use English guides and don't employ locals? Like we still have,
yes,
like overseas guides as well, local guides that are there with us. Like the UK guide is an added extra. As a company, we've worked up relationships. We know our in-country guides; they are amazing. But we get so much not stick for it, but people will comment on Facebook, oh, you're taking away local employment because you're sending UK guides. Well, that's not the case at all. It's And I commented on someone's post the other day, or someone commented on our post the other day about Tanzania, about using local guides. And I'm like, we actually employ more local guides on our trips than most other companies, because when we're on the mountain, we want to have a one-to-one on summit night. We have the UK guide there as well, which we feel is of benefit. And actually, the local guides also feel like having us there is a benefit. You think about Kitap, our guide in Nepal. Kitap is the nicest bloke. He is the best bloke you ever want on a trip, but his English isn't 100%. Like Kitap he's like, oh, can you do the briefing for me tonight? Can you explain what's going to happen in the morning? Just because he doesn't, he's brilliant, but he just doesn't feel that confident about standing up in front of 16 English people and giving that conversation.
And Jake explains it really well to our customers, saying we're almost there in not translating word as in their Nepalese to English. It's kind of being that in between, go between our in-country partners and our customers. It's just to make sure that everything's okay, because like you say, Kitap's fabulous on the mountain, but if something goes wrong and you are at altitude and you have to have some, something sort of your insurance back in the UK or helicoptered off or something like that, God forbid, you want somebody there that can understand what you're saying and can understand the insurance company and get things done. And actually our in-country providers might not be the best people for that in certain situations. So, we had
that with, we did a podcast a few weeks ago with Richard Woods of when things go wrong. That's exactly that situation where having a UK leader on the mountain with Richard when he couldn't even speak, and we had to sort out a helicopter evacuation and get his insurance company to sign off on it. And, if you're trekking independently in Nepal and you suddenly go and try and give that to somebody else to deal with, because you literally will not be able to do it. Like Richard was not in a state to do that. And it was left with Jake and Gareth and they dealt with it and that was all great. So I think you're right.
I think there is, like I say, there's pros and cons to both. And then, going back to, there was the time when I travelled to Japan, and I met the provider in Japan rather than having, a UK guide take me over there or anything. But that worked that time for me because actually I wanted to spend some time in Tokyo before the trip started, exploring Tokyo, because the actual package trip that I was on didn't spend a lot of time in Tokyo. It started going down to Kyoto quite quickly. So I did that, and I was much happier doing that then. And we had an in-country guide then, purely in-country guide. I mean, most other companies, Keith, I'm not speaking out of turn here, but most other companies don't send UK guides. We're amongst the few that do that, aren't we? So this was with another company, but it worked really, really well because it gave me the time to spend in country. And similarly, at the end of my trip in Hong Kong, I spent a bit of extra time there and then flew out elsewhere. So yeah, it very much depends on the traveller and what sort of traveller you are, whether you just want to do the trip that we're offering or whether you want to go on elsewhere afterwards. But usually if people phone through to the office, we talk them through, and most of our customers do the full package with the UK guide. But yeah
I think from our perspective, I think sometimes it's just a friendly face, isn't it? Like you said, like it's so funny when we're stood at, people know who I am. People know who Dave is. Before they've come on the trip, they already feel like they know who their guide is because, we do the Facebook Lives, we do the Zoom calls, we do, like we were up at the adventure at the National Outdoor Expo the other day, and I was having a conversation and someone was like, "Are you Keith?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, I recognize your voice from the podcast." Probably never seen my face before, but it's almost like when people walk up to us at Heathrow or Gatwick and they're like, "Oh, hi, Keith." And you feel really bad because you have no clue who they are, but they've seen you on the videos. They've seen, Dave, they've seen Gareth, they've seen Jake. And sometimes it's just having that, right, all I've got to do is get to the airport and I'm going to meet Keith and then he's going to tell me exactly what I need to do and then I'm fine. And for some people, that's how they want to travel.
It is. And I think that's the beauty of what we do. I think, we do enjoy the relationship that we build with our customers, and we do look at kind of going a bit over and above. I think the WhatsApp groups that we set up before the trip are just fundamental in that relationship building piece, and also when I led the Croatia trip, and you could see somebody, I was like looking at somebody thinking I think they might be on my trip, and they were texting and then my phone pinged and I was like, oh no, I'm here. It's having that relationship with them so they know that we are literally within a quick text message and we're there on the trip. If anything goes wrong, people have got the guide's number, all of those little things. If someone's sick, if someone just needs something, then one of us is there. And it's just, I don't know, to me, I think it takes away all of that stress. Being a solo traveller can be a bit scary. If you are sick, who are you going to turn to?
We had that, we had exactly that in Chile and Easter Island. And, like I said, we had a local guide with us, but the local guides aren't with you all of the time. They'll drop you back to the hotel in the evening and then they'll say, right, I'll see you back again tomorrow morning at 8:00, whatever. And, one of them came to me and was like, I think I've got a problem with my leg. My leg is really hurting. I can't even walk on it. I feel like I've got a dead leg. And obviously the initial thought process then is that, as he got, deep vein thrombosis from being on such a long flight down to Santiago. And, I was like, okay, fine, leave it with me. I'll come back to you in 5 minutes. And I'm like, right, I've got a doctor coming to the hotel in 15 minutes. Going to see you in your room. He said, literally, she went up to his room, put him on fluids, sorted him out. She drove him to the hospital. He was like, if I had been on my own, I would never have been able to deal with that and sort that out. And he was obviously fully grateful. And luckily it wasn't a DVT at all, but it was, he was worried enough at that point to come to me and go, I'm really struggling here. And having somebody to speak to was obviously made him feel a whole lot easier. And we managed to get the situation solved and he was fine.
I think, if our customers were with our in-country providers, I think it's really important to point out they are all qualified to deal with all this. They are more than capable of dealing with this. The beauty of being with one of our guides is that you do have that familiar face. We've built that relationship. You know, we don't want to be a faceless business. We want people to know us and to get us and understand what we're trying to achieve. So that is beautiful. But all of our in-country providers, they are adhering to the right standards that they would be able to deal with an emergency should it happen. But we just want to give customers that, you know, that better service. So yeah.
Completely. I mean, obviously, you know, we came up with a new strap line a few weeks ago of travel with new friends. And I think that's kind of the highlight of what we're trying to promote really is actually, you know, you might come on a trip as a solo traveler, but pretty soon into it, you're going to have new friends that are going to be friends for life.
I have made some lifelong friends through traveling, and I absolutely, honestly, I just, the people I've met, it was almost like going, I found my tribe. Like I didn't realize you guys were in the world as well. I thought I was a bit of an anomaly, that I wanted to travel, but I didn't have the right people to travel with. And, you know, oh my God, you're here. This is where you live. You know, it's just amazing to see. And it's so lovely at the Bucket List Company to see friendships blossom on trips, and then people come back and book on another trip altogether. So, you know, Jake's group that was away with him last year, they've all rebooked and they're doing Tubcow. Your guys came back and booked Killy, is that right?
No, Tubcow again.
Yeah, and Tubcow. And just seeing like the same people booking trips with us to different places with newfound friends. Like I said, I made friends on trips, and I love seeing them on social media. It's almost like, you know, it's been 6, 7, 8 years since we traveled together and kind of grown up together on social media. We might not, you know, catch up every now and again, but we still have this ongoing love of travel. And it's like this unspoken rule within the traveling community that if someone you've met on a trip posts about a trip, everyone comments on it like, oh my God, it's amazing. Like, you're traveling there, I want to travel there. I find that when I meet up with my kind of travel friends, if you will, people that I've met on trips, they always inspire me for my next trip. So whether that's, you know, meeting up with friends that I made in Japan and being inspired to travel to South America, or, you know, I was with somebody that I met when I was in Indonesia, and they'd been to Bolivia, and I was like, oh my God, I want to go to Bolivia. I want to go to Canada too as well. And now I want to go to China, and now I want to go here. It was just like all over. I want to do everything now. So yeah, looking at the friendships that are made and seeing them blossom is just a really wonderful thing. I think connection is so important in a post-COVID world where connection is more important than it ever has been. People just want to find like-minded people to have life experiences with. I mean, you, Keith, your social media is full of people that you've either had on trips, met on trips. It's bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah. And, you know, and likewise, you know, we never get rid of the WhatsApp groups, you know. So, you know, I think, it would be really bad if one day, like, I just got them back off the trip and I got home and it went, you know, you get that message, Keith has left the group. Like, that would be a bit of so we never leave a group. We always stay in it. And, you know, it's just lovely. You know, you're there is, you know, your inspiration on the trip because people want to talk about other trips. They've got other things that they want to add to their list, in knowing full well that, like me, Dave, Jake, Gareth have done those trips. They can have those conversations with us. But just in the WhatsApp group, you know, you're in there every day. You know, like, obviously I've run a lot of bucket list trips now, so I'm in a lot of the WhatsApp groups, probably more than anybody else is. But, you know, there is always a conversation happening each day, and there's always banter from one of the groups, or, you know, there's like one of, like, on an Everest base camp trek a few years ago, there was a guy who loved Crocs, and it was a time when Crocs weren't really cool. And it, you know, literally, if someone sees a meme of a Croc, like, it goes into the WhatsApp group and everyone comes back in. So it's just lovely just to have that. You know, like I say, I reckon probably 60% of my Facebook friends are people I have been on a trip with. and most of my Facebook is trip related, like, because that's my life. That's what I do, So yeah, I think for me, it is about that connection. I loved being at the National Outdoor Show and seeing so many of the customers that I've been away on trips with come up, and you're having a conversation with someone who's potentially interested, and you're like, oh, here's one of my customers now. I went to Chile and Easter Island with them, and they come up and they give you a big hug, and people are like looking at you like, oh, okay. But we really do have that connection with people. Like,
this is more than a business. There is. I think it's really important as the business grows. We've talked about this at length, Keith, that we don't ever lose sight of that. And it's something we're so focused on. We do care about our customers, and I know it's so easy for businesses to say that, oh yeah, we care, but we really do. And I think that also extends not just to customers, but to our in-country partners that we have that are providing these trips with us overseas. For instance, Whitey springs to mind. Now, anyone that's done Kilimanjaro will know Whitey. He's like king of the mountain and is just incredible at providing an amazing trip for our customers. You had him come over to the UK. We brought him over here. He stayed in your house and spent weeks with you down in Devon for your 40th birthday party. Now, that's a different level of care and relationship with in-country providers. And one thing we've certainly committed to is kind of building those relationships and keeping strong with the in-country providers we've got for the benefit of our customers. So as we grow, we're certainly not chopping and changing those providers for silly reasons. We're keeping with the same people. We are providing good quality trips and kind of remembering that those relationships that we're building with our providers are ultimately benefiting our customers.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, I had a lady on Sunday. I'm struggling to pack my bag. I go to Everest tomorrow, and she was sending me we're Facebook friends, and she was sending me a messenger message and sorry to bother you on a Sunday. And it's like, no, it's fine. And that's the bit that I want us to continue, is that, we're not a corporate organization. Like, it's people know who the team are, and that's, we never want to lose that.
Yeah, exactly that. We're kind of growing to be a bigger company, but we're maintaining those small company values. I love the fact that when customers phone up the office, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to say it's 10 out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, we'll know exactly who that customer is, usually what trip they're on. And we can pull up their details really, really quickly. But it is a genuine interest in their trip. So, for instance, a lady called Kerry phoned up yesterday, and as soon as she said her name, I was like, oh, yeah, you're off to Peru. Yeah, how exciting. I'm going to Peru soon. We were talking about Peru.
Are you going to Peru? You haven't mentioned it yet.
Peru. I've mentioned it times, yes. And, there is just a genuine interest in their trips. Again, it's one of our values to be like genuinely, authentically interested. We call it, we give a shit. We really do give a shit about making sure your travel is excellent, and we care enough to make it the best trip as possible.
Well, I think we have that meeting quite a lot in our office of what does the best adventure travel company look like to us. And that's what we are trying to build. We are trying to build, we look at what, as a customer, you've been a customer of the Bucket List company, you've been customer of other companies, I've been customers of other, companies. And it is, to us, what does the best adventure travel company look like? And that is what we are striving to build.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, touching back on the group travel thing, I love when customers get back from the trip and the WhatsApp groups are pinging with goodbyes and loads of photos start coming through at that point. And then we always ask customers if they would kindly review us, just after their trip, how they got on. It's really important to us that our customers do that, because it just helps our profile as well. And also, if there's anything that does need to be changed, then we can deal with it. So we always say to our customers, if you can give us a 5-star review, that'd be great. And if you don't feel you can, email us in why. and to see the comments that come back, like you honestly couldn't write some of them. People come back with comments like life-changing, like awe-inspiring, just mind blown. And people have experiences on our trips which I genuinely think they will talk about for years and years to come. You know, when I think about my travels, I could dine out on them for you know, forever, really. And when you get with a like-minded travel, you know, freak, as we call them, you just bounce off each other, don't you? Like, I'm sure me and you could sit talking about our travel adventures for ages, and it's just seeing that continue within the groups.
Well, I mean, you could see that at the show the other week, can you? Like, once someone got you on the topic of travel, it was like,
God, it was nuts. So yeah, this is the National Outdoor Show at the NEC in Birmingham. It's a 2-day event. We have a stand there, and it's a great show for us purely because there are no other travel companies there, and it's full of outdoorsy types. So, you know,
for any other travel companies listening, please stay away from it.
Yeah, no, we've got the rights to that one. Stay away, please. No, it is fab, and the last few years we've done it, we've always had some really good quality conversations with people, and I think because we are the only travel stand there, people come to us and they're exactly like you said. People want to talk about their adventures. So, you know, even starting a conversation with, so tell me about your last trip. Well, that's it. You know, people will just go and just, we love it. It's a proper brilliant 2 days. By the end of it, we can't speak, but it's just hearing about people's adventures and what they want to do in the future and how we can help them do that is a pretty special place to be. It's a pretty cool business to be in, to make people's dreams come true.
And we're constantly evolving as well, aren't we? I mean, like, you know, when we're launching some new trips soon, but it's going back and listening to what, you know, we want our customers to stay our customers. If we only ever offered trips to Kilimanjaro, people would only book with us once and we'd never see them again. Like, we want to create this family of travelers that want to keep booking with us all the time. And for us to do that, we need to constantly keep evolving.
Yeah, you're spot on, Keith. I think that's exactly what we're trying to grow, a family of travellers. And like in any family, we have to grow up. The Bucket List company started off predominantly with treks and mountain climbing experiences. And we will always have that at the heart of what we do. But by its very term, the Bucket List company, there are many, many bucket list trips out there in the wide world. We started last year developing a best of range of trips to incorporate places like Croatia, Jordan, Tanzania, Nepal, for people who might not necessarily want to do the big treks, but still want to experience the bucket list ticks in those countries. One thing we were really clear on is this saying no to tick box tourism. So we will not take customers to a country and just do all of the real surface level touristy crap that we call it. Like, it just, you know, it would be like going to Paris just to see the Eiffel Tower. You know, there's so much more to countries than just that kind of top level touristy stuff. We will always tick off the main things, but we will dive deeper into a country's culture, to its experiences. We'll offer much more richer experiences that you will not find from other companies, and that is what's going to make us so different at the Bucket List company. You are right, we are growing up and we are offering lots more trips come June. I have been sworn to silence, and I may have spilt a little bit too much on the live that we did today. So I'm certainly not going to say anything more about that, other than people just need to stay tuned to be joining us within the BucketLister Adventure Travel Group on Facebook, to go onto our website and download the brochure. And then as soon as the trips come live, you will be first to see. So the Bucket List company website, there's a link on the podcast, or it's the bucketlistcompany.co.uk. And oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm literally itchy. You've got to change the subject because I'm going to let slip about a trip.
Well, really I think as well, you know, for some of our trips, like, and I'm going to use like the whitewater rafting one to Morocco, because people don't know that exists. So we're also trying to find things that actually at the minute, they're not on your bucket list because you don't know those opportunities even exist. And I think, you know, part of our job is also about inspiring people to add things to their bucket list. You know, things like Cappadocia and things like that. Like, that's probably not on that many people's bucket lists, but actually once you start showing them photos and like other groups doing it, things soon become on and people add to their bucket list from seeing stuff. I mean, everybody should go whitewater rafting in Morocco. That trip, you know, for a 6-day trip, and I spoke about it on the podcast a few weeks ago, is just absolutely brilliant. You know, there's no trekking, you haven't got to walk anywhere, you get to go onto this most beautiful canyon, spend 2 days, for the majority of it, drifting down in a whitewater raft, but you are the only people there. Like, there is no other groups in there. There's only one company that operate, and we were the only group in there for 2 days. We only saw 2 locals. And, you know, those are the sort of trips we want to be creating, where, you know, very few people have actually done what it is you do.
We were talking about this yesterday on the Croatia Chitter Chatter Zoom that we did. And to some extent, we'll probably talk about it on the Jordan Jibber Jabber Zoom on Thursday. Did you see what I did there, Keith? I actually managed to say that. About how, you know, the experiences of going into a country are so much more than what you would see if you just logged on and looked up things to do in Croatia. You know, yes, we go to Dubrovnik, and yes, we walk around the city walls of Dubrovnik, and it is beautiful. And you see all of the things that, you know, the typical Game of Thrones style scenery. But my God, do we go deeper into Croatia, and we do, you know, a farmyard visit, and we pick food and we cook it in a beautiful farmhouse owned by this wonderful family. We kayak around Lopud Island, and we cycle across Šipan and go to this outstanding fish restaurant that you just wouldn't find, because you just absolutely wouldn't go there. It's off the beaten track, but that is proper Croatia. It's not tick box Croatia.
So, Sian, to finish off this podcast, anyone sat there listening now thinking, okay, I'm tempted with group travel, then I'm on my own, what advice would you give them?
I would say pop on the website, have a little browse of the activities we do. They all have activity ratings, so you challenge ratings, sorry. So you can see if you wanted to start off with something a little bit tamer, maybe pick one of the best of trips. If you wanted to try something a little bit more challenging, you want to climb a mountain or have a little bit of a trek, just have a little look and just dip your toe in. Maybe download a guide. That's all you need to do. Download one of the mini guides. There's mini guides for all of our trips on there, and just have a look at what's on offer, because you never know, you might find your next bucket list, you know, bucket list tick on there somewhere. Once you've downloaded the brochure, or just the quick guide for the country you're interested in, just drop us an email. It only needs to be a conversation. You know, there's only a few of us in the office here. We're not going on the hard sell. We will just talk to you about our experiences in that country. We're really honest with our customers. If they phone and they want to book on, I don't know, Aconcagua mountain climb, but they've got no previous climbing experiences and probably wouldn't go up Snowdon at the weekend, we might say, you know what, it's doable, but how about doing these things first? So we won't lie to you. We will be really, really honest about your chances of, if it's summiting a mountain or achieving what it is you want to do. But we're full of knowledge here. So yeah, my top tip is go on and find one quick guide that you can download today.
Perfect. Well, Sian, thank you ever so much. We've given you 48 minutes onto the podcast now, so you might not be on it for 40 episodes, but you know, you've had 48 minutes. So anyway, guys, thanks ever so much for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed chatting with Sian. It's been nice to kind of remember some of the reasons why we do what we do. And sometimes it takes conversations like this to bring them out. So again, thanks ever so much for listening. Until next week, goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the BucketLister Podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.